Hey guys, it's time for another edition of Singles Only Podcast. My name is Paul Farvar. I am your host. On this episode, we do a Zoom call again with comedian Randy Valerio. We really needed a voice of reason on this episode because we were basically agreeing on everything and shitting on the institution of marriage, essentially. But it's a fun episode. Randy's hilarious. Check him out as well. And yeah, this is me right now. This is my life. Things are closing up. Check out my website, Paul F. Comedy, for updated show dates. We have a bunch of post moments, but a bunch of new shows coming as well. And subscribe, review, share, and check out our sponsors as well. Thank you so much.
By now, you know that I'm a lawyer, right? Everyone does. And I don't really practice anymore, although I still have a license. But when I need a lawyer, and I do often need a lawyer, I contact my friend Scott Shapiro. If you're injured on the job or need compensation, you're entitled to payment for more than you know. A lot of times companies will try to settle with you so you don't get a lawyer because they don't want you to know all the monies you're entitled to. Scott Shapiro has been helping injured workers for over 20 years. In addition, his firm handles multiple other cases, including personal injury cases and entertainment law issues. He has handled a lot of my entertainment stuff as well as those of guests on the show and listeners. So you need a lawyer, sure, you can consult me. But if you want a free consultation from the best, don't take any chances. Contact my friend, Scott Shapiro. His number, 312-648-8800, or check out his website, scottshapirolegal.com. There are other Scott Shapiros. Make sure you call the right one, 312-648-8800, or scottshapirolegal.com. Tell him I sent you, and he will be very happy.
It's time for another edition of Singles Only Podcast. My name is Paul Farvar. On this episode, I am working remotely in Arizona because Chicago is shut down. So I was able to do this by Zoom with the host of the Ready, Set, Blow podcast, Randy Valerio. Are you there, Randy?
Yes, sir. Thanks for having me, Paul. Appreciate it. It's nice to meet you virtually.
Yeah. Did I pronounce your name right?
Yep, Randy Valerio. Perfect.
Perfect. So I understand you're a comedian out in California, so you guys are shut down too.
Yeah, we're shut down. I'm actually originally from New York, and I started comedy in Boston a few years back, and then moved out here last year. And the timing couldn't have been better because if I'm going to get trapped in a city, I'd rather be trapped in one that doesn't have the problems with snow and weather and whatnot. So I was able to get out, even on a hike today. So it's not so bad, but it's not Arizona, man. Things are definitely open out there, right?
Yeah, everything's open here. They don't even know that there's a pandemic. So it's
they don't give a shit. I think they figured out the cure for the for the coronavirus is freedom. They just think going outside can be fine for them. So
that's all they believe in. They're all like, it's opened up here, open game. But there are people that are taking it seriously. But the clubs that, by the way, do a great job. They keep it safe. They take temperatures. They force masks on people until they're sitting. So for everyone that's still scared, it's still, if they are doing shows, they're doing it safely from what I
understand. That's been my experience with any show that I've done during the pandemic, which are obviously, as you know, Paul, they're a little bit more sparse than they used to be.
Yeah.
But people are pretty good about the masks and the temperature taking. So no one wants to be the liability, the weak link in a chain. So
right. And the comedians too, we have separate mics, or we're wiping down the mics so we're not sharing stuff. Although,
have you seen the little mic condom that they use? The little
I bring them with me because I didn't bring my own mic this time. But I always bring them. So, but speaking of condoms, let's get into it. So you're single.
Yep.
Why are you single, Randy? Tell us.
Mostly good decisions, I guess.
Yeah.
No, so I've been single for a stretch. So I actually, believe it or not, Paul, and I talk about it in my act a little bit. I was almost married. I was like, 4 weeks away, and I pulled the ripcord on that because she wanted kids right away. I didn't. We had that conversation many times before we split up, but by the end, she really wanted to start the ball rolling on that, and I didn't. So we called that off, and that was back in 2012.
Okay.
Since then, man, I've had one kind of serious girlfriend for about a year, but other than that, I've been out on the street like a hungry dog,
How long was that relationship where you were almost married?
That relationship was like a little over 6 years. So I met her in college. We got together at the end of college, like my senior year. We're together, for 6, 7 years. So I was like 20. I was about to be 29, 37 now. I was about to be 29 when we were supposed to get married, and we'd had a conversation. We had, the wedding was supposed to be September of 2012. We had a first conversation in February where I was like, look, I don't. She was trying to get me to move out of Boston because I was living in Boston at the time with her. She wanted me to move out to the suburbs, get closer to her family, and started talking about having kids. And I was like, I thought we were not going to do that for a while. We wanted to live in the city and do the cosmopolitan thing. So we had that first conversation in February. We had another one in May, or another one in March, and then in May or June, I was like, I can't. I don't want to. I know you want kids and I want to go down that path. I don't want to. I don't know if I ever want kids.
Right.
But I told her at the time, and I still feel that way now. And I don't. And I know you desperately want them, and we're both not getting any younger. And this is not going to work out. I'm not going to want to give you kids, which I assumed to me was the end of the relationship, right? Because
Sure.
that's what she was looking for long term. So we split up, and and it was definitely a rough. It was an amicable split up, but it was a rough adjustment because I've been with her for so long. We were living together. We had a dog together, all that stuff. But the nice part about it is probably about 3 months after we broke up, she met a guy and started dating him seriously, and I just met up with her, New Year's, so like 6, 7 months after that, and we just sat down, have a drink just to catch up, and she like thanked me that she's like, I appreciate you calling it off because it turns out that this is what I want. I wanted a guy like this who wanted to do the family thing, and I was trying to put you into, trying to fit you, Randy, a square peg into a round hole kind of a situation. So that made me feel good, and I ran into her 2-3 years ago. She has 2 kids with this guy. She's happy. I met her new husband. He's awesome.
Great.
We had a nice time. We were a mutual friend's wedding. So it's one of those. Yeah, it worked out. It's one of those things that at the time it was obviously a grueling thing to go through, but in hindsight it worked out, and it also gave me the chance to pursue comedy, which is what I love to do.
Had you been in comedy during the relationship? Had you started it during it, or?
No, my road to comedy was very late. So I actually had about 11 years as like an investment banker and private equity professional doing finance shit. Yeah, a real job that had a real salary.
Same boat. I was
then-
a lawyer, so I get it.
Oh,
I relate. We're in the same situation. So
Yeah. So I came to it late. So I started comedy only at 4 years ago. I got into it. I've been friends with comics, and I've always loved it. I've always been, I started going to the Comedy Cellar as just a patron since I was like 14 because I grew up in New York City. And I never thought it was something that was for real. But I had after I split up with her, I took in on a role helping run this company that we bought out of bankruptcy. And when we sold that company, this is in 2016, I had, my role was gone because they don't need, a strategy guy when they get picked up by a bigger organization. So I got a severance package, and I was like, oh, I get to take some time off. So I was like, oh, let me take a year or 2 off and travel and whatnot. And then, I had that year off, like 3 months in, I have some comic buddies in Boston breaking my balls saying, if you like comedy so much, come to an open mic. I'd met Jeff Dye, who we both know, open for on the road, and he was a big proponent of pushing me into it. He's like, dude, you're funny. You should just give it a shot and see if you like it. And I started doing it in September 2016 and didn't look back. So it was a weird road to get to the start of comedy. But it actually, when you think back, it's sort of that butterfly effect. Like if I had not made that big change in my life to decide not to get married and not go down that conventional route, I wouldn't have arrived at, being able to do what I do today. So which makes me far more happy.
Well, true. And it definitely, I'm happy too. And I get it. Have you had a serious relationship since you've started comedy?
Yeah, I had one girl that I was dating. It was a Lebanese girl. I was living in Boston. That's where I started comedy. She was living in New York. I'd met her in New York, just going out there. So we never really lived in the same city, which actually, for your listeners, I think helps if you're.
If you listen to the podcast, I say that all the time. I think distance is the best way to make a successful relationship. I advocate.
You don't happen to see each other when you do. And you don't bring all that.
Effect. You have the nonstop honeymoon effect. You don't have to deal with reality. Yeah.
Precisely. So I started dating her right around the time I started doing comedy. So my first year in comedy, I was dating her, and then by the end, she was great, but I didn't ever think there was going to be. I didn't think we were going to get married or anything like that. I'm not a big believer in marriage, and we can get into that if you want.
Yeah. No, marriage is an outdated institution.
Yeah, that's where I sit on it. I'm a big believer in loving people and loving somebody. but getting the state involved is never good. It just adds a third party to it, when there doesn't need to be one.
Well, and you said you don't want kids, right? Or you're pretty sure.
Yeah. And the only reason in my mind I would get married is if I had kids with a woman,
Yeah.
and really just to protect the children. It's not had nothing to do with me or her.
So we're both basically preaching the same concept here. So normally on the show, we have a voice of reason who's like a married, successfully, happily married woman on the show, who's my voice of reason. But right now we're just going to yes and each other for so basically we've got the same concept where it's like, look, and I've advocated for the 7-year marriage where it's a contract, you can renew it. And we're trying to trademark that right now where it's like it's like a football,
I heard they do something like that in Portugal. I heard they do something like that in Portugal. Like you have to renew your marriage license every 10 years or something like that.
So I was a lawyer and I didn't do family or divorce law, but I have a friend who's working on a contract for us where we're going to try to see if it works, where I think it takes the pressure off of marriage. And it's like a 7-year, you're like, okay, I just got to stay healthy. And then, your contract year, you could decide if you want to stay in the marriage. And if you want to call it off, you can get traded.
I love that idea because get traded away, become a free agent again. I love that idea because I feel like it gets rid of the pressure, but it also keeps a different type of pressure on each individual in there. Keeps the pressure to be dynamic, interesting, exciting, and passionate. All those things. If you're married to someone, they fucking can't go. There's nothing stopping you from giving up on yourself a little bit, which will in turn make them give up on you. You know, like the fact that they can walk away makes you act right. If that makes any sense.
If you want to stay in the relationship, your contract year, you're going to start, giving up, doing more things that you don't want to do. There's going to be, sexual experiences that you've got to keep it interesting. Whatever it takes to keep the marriage happy, 7-year, you want a renewed contract. So, but if you also like the other side is if you want to leave, it's like, all right, I'm just going to call it in because I have an idea on this new team I want to go to. So
yeah, and there's no friction cost when you like a fucking divorce, which will bankrupt both parties involved. Exactly. And you're a lawyer. I've actually because I did a lot of dating in my single year. So just because I'm single doesn't mean I'm not dating different women. But I was dating a woman in New York after I'd met the girl the one year relationship I had during this sort of single stretch that I've been on. And she was a divorce attorney. And I asked her, I was like, so do you got is it a pain in the ass? She's like, oh, it's ridiculous. Like you make good money, but you're dealing with different, with both parties and their different wants and desires. He's like, but what you don't understand is like, make no mistake. Like I work with the other divorce attorneys all the time. We'll call each other and keep couples fighting to make more money, to run the meter, Yeah. And I was like, what? She's like, oh yeah. Like he'll call me and say, hey, do you want to fight over the China set so we can fucking, get another week's worth of billing? This thing? Well, and they'll start a beef between the two parties, and it's fucked up. So another good reason to avoid
another bag of worms. Yeah, that's not ethical. But then again, New York is a whole nother can of worms.
Well, I mean, there's also a woman I was sleeping with. That's why I didn't mention her name.
Yeah, of course.
Some dipshit comedian would bring it up on a podcast, but
have you dated comedians? Have you dated comedians?
No, I've never dated any comedians, and that's one thing. It's one thing. Good. Yeah, even in my past, I when I was in finance or whatever, I wouldn't date coworkers or subordinates or anything like that, just because, the old saying shit where you eat. But I just felt uncomfortable with it. Like I never wanted there to be any sense of impropriety. Yeah. I don't want to be looked at cross-eyed. Especially in the era we're now, where people are very sensitive to sexual harassment and anything even in that vein. I avoid that. I avoid. And then it's not to say there's not a lot of cute female comedians, just not for me.
Were you dating anyone during COVID? Did that light just go on? Isn't that crazy?
It did. It was like it's like fucking like a horror movie.
Yeah, that was scary. Okay.
Have I been dating anyone since COVID? Yeah.
Yeah. How are you meeting these people?
I have. It was actually a woman I met at a comedy show in Arizona. She again, she doesn't live here, which is fantastic, Yeah. So and it's been going great. And it was, I met her through because I play Arizona, 3-4 times a year. Right. I met her last fall. We kept in touch, and I came out to see her a couple times. And then during that little window in like June, when Texas and Arizona were open for no reason whatsoever, I was able to squeeze in a show and go see her out there. Yeah. And then it's nice. And it's also nice to like the older I get, I'm 37. The older I get, the less pressure I feel like it's kind of like I'm past the point of no return. It's like, oh well, that's just going to be like women don't expect me to be the guy to do the white picket fence thing anymore because my lifestyle's not like that. So it's easier going in now, and my state of mind is better going in because I'm a little bit more confident in what I want out of life. You know.
Well, that's the thing. Like they know they're getting into. I have a podcast, which is this podcast has cock blocked me more than ever, and it's almost like, buyer beware. Because now you know what you're dealing with. But we have this crazy lifestyle where, and you and I have that common where we're not like other comedians where this is our passion, but if it doesn't work, we're gonna go somewhere else. We left jobs where we were very successful and monetarily taken care of, where now we're like, drink tickets and exposure is, oh cool, all right, I'll take that. Like,
yeah, whatever it takes.
Like I canceled I'm staying longer in Arizona right now because my shows in Chicago are canceled, and I'm just gonna do 10-minute slots at these clubs here just so they know who I am.
To break in, and that's
hard for women to understand sometimes that's you're married to comedy.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing, and it's one thing when I first started, and I first started dating that girl when I got into comedy, and I had been in finance and was doing this, and it was like, she thought it was a hobby, and the comedy started to creep in. She started to realize that she was taking a secondary role.
Yeah.
If I had a spot, whatever plans we had are fucked. You know, like, well, I'm going to do the spot. So she started to get a little bit annoyed with that, and and that was another hurdle in my dating experience. Like, getting women used to the idea that this is what I do. That like my free time is in the afternoons. At night I'm going out. I gotta do a spot. So it's nice to meet women now that I'm in comedy, that they know that this is what it is. So they have no expectation of that. So the woman that I was dating in Arizona, she's in the restaurant business too. So she understood. She gets that. And honestly too, I would say it's weird. Like, I feel like I said this on my podcast. I feel like I date women that are a little bit older or a little bit younger, but that like 28 to 32 time frame for women, they got a lot of pressure, maybe internally and externally, from their friends to settle down, have a family. What are you going to do about this? Yeah. And women that are below that, they don't give a shit. Women above that said fuck you to that a long time ago. Right. So it seems like these are the women that gravitate towards me that I now spend more time dating.
Well, that's the sweet spot as well. We talk about that on the podcast, where I don't date women in that age demo under 35 because unless they've had children already, because I'm like, all right, well, I'm not gonna waste your time because you're on a clock where you may want to have kids, and I don't want you to resent me because now you spent 2 years or even 6 months with some asshole.
Yeah. And I'm very vocal about that on stage. When I talk about it in my comedy, I talk about it on my podcast. And I also tell the women that I date, that's the last 2 women I've dated. Both of them, I've said, yeah, I'm not interested in having kids. And they were like, yeah, neither am I. They made it very clear up front. So one of those things,
sure.
And I think it's just being practical about it. It's like, look, I can be with you for forever if we find love, but not the way that, Ward Cleaver and his fucking wife did it. We're not doing that. So that's out the window.
When you say find love, what is your definition? What do you want to find someone that's like monogamous? That's the goal?
Yeah, look, I'm capable of being monogamous. Obviously,
sure.
It's fun to sleep around. I'm not gonna, no one likes having sex, so fucking let's not hide about it. But and I have been monogamous before in relationships. I'm capable of it. But I think that for me, finding love is really about finding a partner that you're ready to, like, sort of build your own pirate ship with and do it the way you guys want to do it. And like I said, live that sort of cosmopolitan, us against the world lifestyle. I've been lucky enough to have been in love 4 times in my life, which is 4 times more than most people.
Sure.
I've met a lot of great women. Unfortunately, one of them was when I was younger. One of them was when, the woman I was supposed to marry. One of them was after that, and and so on. So it is possible, and I hope to find love again. Do I know it's going to last a lifetime? I don't know, but every time you fall in love, you want to continue to feel that feeling as long as possible, and so you want to make it last a lifetime. Would I like that? Of course, but am I expecting that, or am I forcing it? No. I like you said, like, I feel like falling in love is easy. Staying in love is hard, right? Being sure. Sort of slugging it out. That's why sometimes I joke around, like, sometimes it's easier. It takes more commitment to get divorced than it does to get married, right? Because lust and that sort of that glow from love, you can get married behind that. But to divorce someone, to go through that trial, to that fucking that angst, takes a lot of effort and commitment to power through it. You know, that's why people don't choose to get divorced. They have to get divorced. By the time they're getting that done, they're in court proceedings. It's long been fucking over. You know, like, you know, no one wakes up in the courtroom saying what happened. Like, you know what happened. It was off the skids for a while. So I try not to focus on that. I try to just focus on finding someone that I love and I'm compatible with, and keep that going as long as possible. And, you know, unfortunately, it hasn't worked for a lifetime yet, but maybe someday it will, you know?
So you said pirate ship. What the fuck do you mean by a pirate ship? Why
Oh,
would
so like I told that to my ex-fiance, you know, I was like, she wanted me to like move back into her parents' neighborhood so we could be close to her family.
Sure.
And I was like, listen, I'm not joining your family. We're starting our own. That's what I said. We're going to build our own pirate ship. It's me and you, and you know, and we're setting sail together. And we're the ones with this ship. You know, it's not we're not swimming with your parents' fucking family or my family. We're gonna do it the way we want to do it, and our family can fall in line or not. You know, and that's what I mean by sort of.
Hold on. I think I just.
Sure.
Okay, wait a minute. You could have said any type of ship. So
it is kind of a gay reference. Maybe I should change that. there's something a little gay about pirates. Not that I'm really being gay, but I'm not gay, so I shouldn't use a pirate reference.
Like a pirate ship, like, are you the captain on this ship and she's like the Captain Hook or what?
No, well, I think of it more as us being rebels. You know, the pirate reference is like we're not part of the army. We're going to do it our way. You know, we're not doing it everyone else's way. We're going to do it the way we want to do it.
All right, that's fine. Now you were talking about
I got to edit it up.
Falling in love. You said you've done it 4 times, and then in all those situations, obviously, at some point you fell out of love. Correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And was there ever a situation where you were still in love with the person, but it ended, whether they ended it and you were unaware, or you just kind of like, you guys couldn't make it work?
Yeah.
Because I don't know if I've ever been in love, but to me, the longest relationships I had, there was a certain point where we just couldn't connect anymore.
Yeah, and that happened more than look. I don't know if any of my partners ever cheated on me in those relationships, but that was never the reason we broke up. You know, so that never came to surface to my light, and so I'm not going to cast aspersions to say they are or they aren't. And so that wasn't the reason. The reason was more of the sort of the growing apart, which is a harder breakup, I think, because you know, because it's not like, oh, she betrayed me or he betrayed her, it's over. It's why I love this person's wonderful, but why can't I connect with him anymore the way I used to? You know, and you start to, and it's basically, it's 1 degree when you start out, right? But then as the days go on, that fucking angle gets bigger and bigger, right? Because as time goes on, space sort of expands in between, and that's hard to come to terms with. That's why it was so hard to figure out that I shouldn't have gotten married to my ex-fiance, because there was nothing wrong with her or me, and she was a wonderful person. I just didn't want the lifestyle that she wanted, and she didn't want the one that I was looking for. So that was hard. But you know, falling in love, like I feel like no one's going to ever have 100% of what you're looking for. Like, no one's going to check every box that you want, because everyone has a lot of fucking needs and desires, right? But if you can find someone that has 80% and you could work on, and you can deal with the other 20, that's what you could work for it. So, you know, so the women that I've fallen in love with were more of that ilk. So it wasn't just a home run easy, but you know, we sort of grown to love each other and sort of grow apart.
You're not settling because 80% of you guys are compatible, and you just deal with the 20%. She has bad taste in music or whatever the hell it is.
Yeah, or her mom sucks or blah blah blah, or friends or shit, whatever it is. You know, whatever it is. You know, it's usually someone around them that's the problem and not them. You know, my experience. Sure. But you know, so I've never been sort of like shocked, you know, like whoa, you know, just dumped like that. No, at least in those situations where I've been in love. I've definitely had sort of the one that got away. You know, there's a few girls that are like, oh, she's awesome, but it didn't work out so early on that I never got to be in love with them. So I was like, oh, I wonder what if I hadn't fucked it up, because I fucked up plenty. You know, I'm not perfect. And then there's other ones like, oh, you know, what if I reached out or tried harder? There's a couple of those. So I don't know that I was ever in love with them, but I do think that they had the qualities I look for in a person.
Yeah.
So that's sort of like, you know, that wondering, you know, like what if, which you know, no one should spend a lot of time doing, because you know it's not productive time.
Not healthy, no.
Yeah, but you think about it. You stop and think about it every once in a while.
Have you, how are you meeting people, whether pre-COVID, post-COVID, or during COVID, I should say? Are you using apps at all, or are you just meeting them in real life?
Yeah. So when I first got out of that long-term relationship, the Tinder had just come out and it was hot.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So this was like the first thing that people were like, oh shit, and people.
Smash City.
Yeah, and Smash City, and Tinder broke the mold in the sense that before that, being on eHarmony or Match was looked at as a little weird because it wasn't mainstream. Tinder made dating online mainstream. It made whatever preconceived notion or weird hang up people have about meeting someone on the internet made that fucking disappear.
Right.
So it was open season. Now I spent the first year after I got out of that breakup. I took 3 months where I just didn't date anybody. I let myself be sad. I stayed in the gym and I tried I tried to limit my booze so I wouldn't get fucking foggy headed and all that. And then I started going out every night, even if I didn't have. I would just eat dinner at the bar down the street from me. I was living alone, but I like sort of forced myself to talk to women at bars, old school. I went old school for the first year.
Yeah.
So I did no Tinder. I would just pick up girls at bars or coffee shops, anywhere I was really. I mean, like the airport. I was not afraid to approach a woman. I was like, I've treated it like, all right, I got to get back on my feet. It was almost like open micing, like I got to get these reps in. And I'm gonna bomb, but this is part of it, So there was a lot of bombing. But then by the end of the year, I was pretty good at introducing myself and meeting women organically, if you will. And then I got into the dating apps, and it just turned into a deluge of women. I mean, that first 2 years of Tinder and Bumble is. I mean, I was on 2 dates a night, and it was like, whichever one I liked more is the one I called up to see the next day. Like,
right.
It was like a fucking factory. So it was a little bit excessive.
Yeah.
So I used those, and then I got off them while I was working, and then dating this woman that I was seeing in New York. Got back on them, so I kind of get back on and off the dating apps now. Lately, I know a lot of people are back to meeting on those dating apps, but really the way it works now is the best dating app in the world is Instagram. I mean,
yams.
You find someone that you like or someone that follows you that you find attractive. You strike up a conversation in their DMs. You get them on the phone. You find out they're nearby. You get a drink, and that. So the woman in Arizona I met. I met that way. I had her come out to a show. I feel like that's where dating's going. Is sort of social media is just becoming the all-in-one marketplace for how people communicate with each other, including picking people up. For any listeners out there, I would highly recommend you become very clever on how to talk in Instagram DMs. That'll do you way better than fucking dating apps, in my experience.
Know the difference between your and your to
yes. Women hate that shit, man. Women fucking hate that shit, which is crazy because of all the things that they'll snipe on you for, that seems to be one of the big ones. I didn't know all these women were fucking English teachers, but maybe I'm wrong.
Or they get mad when I always do UR just to shorten it, and they're like, oh my god. I'm like, listen, I have a law degree. I'm not some jackass. But
I know,
get mad.
It's fucking funny that they cop an attitude with that, because I feel like they use emojis left and right. Like that's any better.
Right. I send emojis all the time. But what when you talk about meeting people organically, have you found that? So women always say they want to meet people organically, but I found that when I do, obviously there's limited opportunities before COVID where you go to a bar where you're, because we have shows all the time. So it's very rare that we go out to clubs or anything. But when I do, they don't know who I am. And you go up to people, and a lot of times, especially with the younger generations, they're just like, we just want to talk to our friends. Can you just leave us alone? We're like, oh, sorry. Like I talked about this story before where I was out with my girl I was dating at the time and her hot friend. And this guy just came up to him, gentleman guy, was just like, hey guys, how's it going? And then her friend just was a complete asshole to this guy. And I was like, why you could have just said, we're busy. Like she had a boyfriend, but it doesn't matter. Like he was not, like now he's not going to go talk to women because
he was being respectful. He got slapped on the wrist for respectfully approaching a woman.
Yeah.
Which
when he walked away, he's like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Have a good night and stuff like that. And she's like, whatever. I'm like, dude. And I just was yelling at my girlfriend's friends.
Where are all the good men? Well, you just yelled at one.
Yeah. Like, you ever find that?
Polite. What the fuck, man? Like he didn't touch you. He didn't grab your ass and say anything. Anything, make any innuendos. You just said, hey, what's going on, ladies? Like, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. And I think he offered to buy him a drink. Like, I think that's all it was. Like, he's like, hey, can I buy you a drink? Like, It
See,
was
that
hard. Have you had that experience more often now than before?
that would happen more now. When I first started picking
Yeah.
up women like that organically, it was 2013. So like I said, the dating apps were new and people were on those mostly. So it was like a novelty act that I would actually approach a woman at a bar. They were like, it was refreshing to them. Like, oh, that's so sweet of you to like actually come over and just talk. And I would do it that way, just like this guy did. I wouldn't just go up and hit on a woman directly like that. I would engage their friends and ask them an honest question. What are you ladies up to tonight? You guys having fun? How many guys came over here and struck out? I joke around about that.
Yeah.
And then I talked to the group of their friends. And then as after 10, 15 minutes of conversation, if I lasted that long, I'd be like, hey, and I turned to the woman that I was interested in. Hey, say, you seem great. I got to run to catch up with a buddy in another bar, but I'd love to grab your number and take you for a drink sometime. And they respond well to that. And then I think I think probably around 2017, 18. With the whole Harvey Weinstein and all this other horrible shit that's gone on, which I obviously totally disagree with. These guys are fucking monsters. But women got a little bit more reserved and more uptight about it, and men also got more nervous about approaching women, and because they weren't sure in which way to do it without seeming like a fucking creep. So I do think it's a big problem now. But I do think post-COVID, like when we're actually allowed to get back out in rooms with people, there's going to be a lot of pent-up sex demand. It's going to be I mean, there's going to be a baby boom for that. It's going to be fucking open season. So
right. I feel like that already. Is that in LA? You guys are LA is completely shut down still?
No. There's outdoor seating at the bars, so you can go. So like last night I went and watch the Dodgers win outside. So it can happen, but then also you got to be careful now. Because some women are more uptight about wearing a mask and not social distancing. Some women, if they don't give a fuck, I mean, it's just like anything else in life. So that's why I say get crafty on Instagram for a while, because that's going to be your best bet. Because one, and I do like, and Instagram's a way better dating app. If you think about it, they put their whole life on there, their interests. There's no filters, well, there might be filters, but it's not curated like you would purposely curate a dating app. So it's a way. You can always click on and see their what photos they're tagged in. So it's not just the ones that they post; it's the ones their friends post. To see what they really look like.
That's the key. That's like the key to life is what they really want you to. You can see, and then you can also see a lot about what they're posting. Like if they have like 80 pictures of food they ate, you're like, okay,
yeah,
unless you're a foodie or like a chef, this isn't my fucking cup of tea. But, yeah, I like the tag feature. I think that's the way to go to get a better idea of what someone looks like or what they really are into. But
and there's also, and the way you flirt now too is basically like, so if you don't know, so if there's someone that you like on Instagram and you don't know them, they're not following each other, you basically like 3 of their photos that you don't want to like the one of her with the ass shot. You want to be classy, one of her smile, one of hanging out with her friends, one with the dog, and then you hit follow. And if you get the follow back, that means it's on. Then it's like, all right, she knows that I looked through her shit. I think she's cool. And if she follows me back, then she knows I'm actually interested in her. That's the new flirting in 2020.
Yeah, but sometimes I feel like I get that, and then I look and I'm like, oh, they're just like looking for followers, and they're gonna unfollow me as soon as I do, because I'm like, oh, is this girl like interested in me? And they're like, oh no, she's just likes everything because
she's trying to build her following.
Trying to build her following, yeah.
Which is a little skeezy, but there's a lot of that going on too now with women these days. A lot of amateur Instagram models putting sponsored ads on their Instagram to just bump their following up. For what reason? I don't know. Like they probably want to sell some fit tea or something. I have no idea.
Yeah, I'm going to try to figure that one out. Are there deal breakers for you now that obviously you're at a point where you've got you have success with your podcast, you have success with comedy, you were successful before? Are there like, no matter what this person looks like or whatever, if they don't know who Bruce Springsteen is, I'm out, or whatever? I don't know.
Smoking. Smoking. I find, and look, I smoke. Obviously, I live in California. I talk about it on my podcast. I smoke plenty of weed, so I have no problem with that. But
tobacco,
tobacco for whatever reason, and if she smokes a Juul, that's fine. And dude, I've hung out with girls Canadian girls who like dipped, and that didn't even gross me out that much. Oh yeah. But for whatever reason, and I think it's because I grew up and both my parents were smokers growing up, and something about it just turns me off. So that's a deal breaker for me. Kids aren't, I don't mind if a girl has kids. I mean, like I said, Don't expect me to be I'm not trying to fill in for dad, and they know that, which is nice.
You're a bad.
I actually find that single mothers tend to be much more reasonable people than the general population. They've had the trials of life, so they kind of know where they're coming from.
What I say about single moms and why I enjoy that relationship the best, or why it's more successful for me, is their priority is their kid, just like our priority is comedy. And then their escape, you have that honeymoon idea where you have it, you talked about earlier, where, a long distance relationship, it's the same thing because they're in the suburbs with their kid in Chicago, and they get to hang out with you, and then it's like, okay, you go back to your kid, I go back to comedy. So.
Yeah, exactly. And that's probably, smoking's probably the only deal breaker. I mean, I never asked a woman about her political affiliation, so that's
Sure.
I'll figure that out. I feel like that's it's almost becoming like a fucking badge. It's getting annoying. Like
one side or the other, sure.
Yeah. So it's probably smoking, and I think a woman that lacks passion is a turnoff. That, like, if I become like, if she's too, not needy, but too focused on the relationship being the end all be all, I want a woman who's more independent and who has a passion beyond her partner, because it will make her, by definition, a more interesting person to me, right? If she has all these interests and talents that don't involve me, then when we come together, we can talk about those and share those things. I can share mine and she can share hers. So that's what I look for. So a woman who's, very needy or very jealous or very, invasive of your privacy and sort of demanding of your time and sort of that needing that constant reassurance, that could be a turnoff for me. But yeah, smoking and
what if they're passionate about cigarettes, but they don't smoke it? They don't smoke them, but they're like passionate about legality of them, and like
I would be okay with that if she was a tobacco executive making tens of $1,000 a month. I'm more than happy. I'd love to be a kept man, please. Okay. I will live large off of cigarette money. I don't give a fuck.
I'll draw the line.
I try to be a good guy, but I never said I won't sell out, Paul. You know what I'm saying? I have a price.
No, I can't. You don't like smoking, but she's like, I don't smoke anymore. I do chew tobacco, but I'm very into tobacco rights. It's my priority in life. I'm passionate about it. You're in, right?
It's all right. It's all right. It's all right, baby. We can work through that. Just don't make me smoke.
Right. She's not gonna. She might make you dip. She might be like, "Hey, can you try our new bowl?"
Oh, God. Last time I did that, I almost vomited all over my shirt.
I briefly started chewing again during COVID because I didn't want to start smoking. I quit smoking in almost over 15 years ago. But
congratulations.
Yeah, but I didn't want to do that, and I wasn't really drinking for a long time, and so I started chewing again. I was like, and then this girl I was dating was like, "What is that in your mouth?" I'm like, "Oh, you didn't know I chew tobacco." You're a baseball player? I'm like, I kind of wish I was. So, and I wasn't dipping. I was like doing the pouches, like no, not pouches, like the Red Man.
Like for real long cut chew. Oh shit!
Cut tobacco, like your Canadian friend. Yeah.
Yeah, I took shit once because a buddy of mine, I was hanging out with a bunch of, I was actually worked for the hockey team in college, and a friend of mine who I lived with wasn't on the hockey team, handed me one of those like little pouches of dip you put in your mouth. Yeah, but the pouch, not actually putting it in the raw skull. I put that in, and they called me just the biggest pussy of all time because those Canadians, they just chew raw glass and just put just giant hunks of dip in there to get to really get it in their bloodstream. They called me a fuck fairy for doing it once.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know against that. And the vape pens aren't so bad. Those don't bother.
No, it makes sense. Yeah. Well, Randy, we're out of time. We went a little too long, but that's okay. Where can people find out more about you and your podcast, Ready, Set, Blow?
Yeah. So every Wednesday we come out on all platforms. The Ready, Set, Blow podcast. Me and my co-host Chase Abel. We sort of tackle the day's news, and it comes from two very different viewpoints. He's a refugee from Eritrea. And I'm a kid from New York, so we link up. Eritrea is a African country that used to be part of Somalia that broke off in the mid '90s during a revolution. So he has an interesting take on life. And then of course my Instagram is my number one, where I put everything. So follow me on Instagram at Randy Valerio. I'll be at Off the Comedy this weekend, off the Comedy Club in Naples.
This will air after that. So
all right. Well, then in November, check me out. I'll be at the Stress Factory in Bridgeport, Connecticut, and in New Jersey. So look out for those dates.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Randy. I really, really appreciate it. It was fun to finally talk to you. We will definitely be on the road together at some point. We got to come up with some sort of show about dating or something. I don't know.
I'm down with it, man. Thanks so much for having me, Paul. Appreciate it, brother.
Thank you so much. And thank you all for listening to another edition of Singles Only Podcast. Please keep sharing, subscribing, and tell your friends.